Framed. James was deep in sleep when a loud bang shattered the silence. Before he could react, his bedroom door flew open. Every boot stormed inside, and ash flashlight beamed pierced the darkness. James Obiora, a voice barked, "Get up!" James bolted upright, heart started pounding. Before he could speak, strong hand grabbed him, yanking him off his bed. Cold metal cuff clamped around his waist. What is going on? What is going on? What did I do? He stammered. The officers ignored him. They dragged him out of his father's house, shoving him into a police van. As the siren wailed, James stared out the window. His childhood home faded into the distance. Watching everything unfold from the shadow was Chief Officer Patrick, the police officer of Lagos State, which is James' own uncle. His face was readable as he gave the order, "Take him in." At the station, James sat in a dimly light interrogation room. His hands were still cuffed, his mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then the door opened. Chief Officer Patrick walked in. James' uncle, the person who should be fighting for him, but he looked in his eyes was cold. He threw a file onto the table. A photograph slid across to James. A blood shoe. James' stomach dropped. "That is yours, isn't it?" Chief Officer Patrick asked. James shook his head. "I don't know how that got there." Officer Patrick leaned in. "Mary and Jane are missing." "James, we found blood in the warehouse. Witnesses saw your car there." James' grandmother heard her scream over the phone. James' heart pounded. No, 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 this is a mistake. I have never hurt anyone." "Then explain why Mary was seen running out of your car in tears." James shut his eyes, trying to remember that night. He had argued with Jane. She had said something about Mary. He had been angry, but murdered? No, 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 no. "I was drunk. I cancelled my plans and drank alone. Cynthia even saw me at home that night." Officer Patrick's expression didn't change. "And yet, after you loaded Mary's dead body into the truck and abandoned her body, you returned home at 11:30 and met Jane." James breathed. "I didn't do this. I didn't do this," he whispered, but the evidence was stacked against him. Days passed, weeks passed. James remained locked in a cell while the investigation continued. His father came to visit. His eyes were red, filled with sorrow. "Even if you were drunk, son, I don't know you would kill someone." But the evidence was overwhelming. Blood on his shoe, witnesses, and the missing girl. James' own mother stopped visiting when she finally did. She sat across from him, her face unreadable. "James," she said, "did you do it?" "No, Mom, I didn't." She exhaled sharply and stood up. "The evidence says otherwise." Then she walked away. The trial was swift. The headlines were brutal. 19-year-old John Obiora sentenced to 10 years for the murder of two girls. The gravel struck. James was dragged away. Chief Officer Patrick stood by watching. Prison was worst for James he had ever imagined. He was beaten, bullied, and also forced into hard labor. His food was stolen, his body ached from constant abuse. Cynthia was the only one who visited him. One day, Cynthia came to him and told him, James, your sentence is almost over. James said yes and smiled and said to her, Cynthia, you are now a successful model. James only managed to smile and he had stopped hoping. Then tragedy struck. His father died. James sobbed in his cell, blaming himself. If I hadn't been locked up, I would have fought harder. Maybe he would still be alive. When he told Cynthia that his mother hasn't visited him in 6 years, she just squeezed his hand. Stay strong, James. It is almost over. 10 years later, James stepped out of a prison, a free man. Cynthia was waiting for him. She took him to his father's grave as he stared at the headstone memories flooded back. The man who had believed in him even when the world didn't. Then it came the real question. Should he visit his mother? He hesitated but went anyways. The moment she saw him, she flinched. Leave, she said. Mom, please, James said. How do you expect me to move on? The mother said. They have families who never found their daughter's body. I don't care if you're my son, leave and don't come back. James was heartbroken and wandered the streets with nothing but a small bag. That was when the accident happened. A truck lost control at an intersection, crashing into a small car. The impact sent the car skipping into Cynthia's vehicle. James jumped out. Furious, he marched toward the driver. You better have insurance because the man turned around, revealing a pocket police badge. Sorry, he said. I just got transferred to Lagos. James froze. The officer extended a hand and said, I am Jude. James hesitated before shaking it. But there was something off about this man that felt off. That night, James ran into Charles, his old best friend, the one who never visited him in prison. Charles barely looked guilty. I was busy. I now work in the hospital, he said. Before James could respond, Daniel, another old friend, called Charles' phone. The chief wants to see you, James. James frowned and said, why? No answered. That night, before going to Chief Officer Patrick's office, James received an unexpected visit. Paul, Chief Officer Patrick's son, that is mentally unstable, handed James a painting and whispered in his ear, for you, James. James stared at it. His blood ran cold because he said to himself, what is hidden in this painting? As James opened to look what was in the painting, his body ran cold. He was so shocked at what he saw. The truth that changed everything. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting the part 2 of the story in my next video. Thank you.